I'm going to bring in Donnie Deutsch, who is a longtime friend of Michael Cohen's and has been in touch with him throughout this process. Donnie, what are we to make of what Michael Cohen has put out to the world today?
Ari, I've been saying this for 2 years. It's always about the money. It always has been about the money. And it's always about Russian money. I think you're going to start to see stories about Saudi money. Donald Trump went bankrupt in the mid-90s. Donald Trump couldn't get money from anywhere. You have Trump Tower filled with apartment after apartment of LLCs of Russians. Donald Trump has been owned by the Russians for a long time. Donald Trump has been owned by Vladimir Putin. This is the first time we're seeing a line. It's not just about collusion. It's not about helping to win the election. It's about the money. It's about business. And this is just the tip of the iceberg. I really believe even post-Trump presidency, you're going to see the Trump business empire being picked apart for the next 20 years. It's basically built as a criminal enterprise. As far as Michael, I've been speaking to Michael over the last few days. I've spoken to Michael today. Michael, it's been an interesting arc for Michael. Michael, obviously, as we know, and we've talked a lot about the show, was an emotional, personal ally of Donald Trump. It wasn't just business. He felt like a part of the family, and obviously said he would take bullets for him, and obviously did take bullets. What's going to come out question, was he told to lie or did he lie on his own? I think that's going to be an interesting question that's going to come forward. Michael, we've watched him turn. We watched him all of a sudden say, you know what, no, I need to help myself. I need to help my family. I need to help my country. Michael today, as I spoke to him, sounded very different than I've spoken to him in the last 2 years. He finally feels that he's kind of on the other side now. Yes, he's made mistakes, and yes, he's going to pay for them. But going from being seen as a bad guy to maybe a guy that's trying to do right thing, maybe not a bad guy, a good guy. And he knows he made mistakes. And
Are you saying Michael Cohen conveyed to you today that he's proud of this chapter?
He's beyond proud of this chapter. He really feels he's done the right thing, and he really feels he's going to be the linchpin. And obviously, so does Robert Mueller. You know, if you think about the sentence that he got a 6-month sentence to be served concurrently with where, so that means he got nothing. He basically pled to lying to Congress, and Bob Mueller basically gave him no penalty. So what does that say to you? It says that Bob Mueller knows how important it was. He sat with him for 70 hours, and when Michael Cohen is sentenced December 12th, he's going to be sentenced for these two things together, and you will hear a judge read a letter from Bob Mueller about how Michael has cooperated, the way he's cooperated. If you saw, the people who were in court today with him saw the way he was relating with the prosecutors and with the press. It was a very different Michael Cohen than several months ago. Michael Cohen is on this team, he's on the blue team, and he's on the right team.
Well, Maya, I wonder if you could give us your view of Donnie Deutsch's theory of the case there, which is that the money is the problem. He outlined a vision where the legal process could ultimately be picking apart Donald Trump's entire fortune, if there is a fortune, or entire debt, Trump Organization, the rest. And to paraphrase Donnie Deutsch and sprinkle in a little bit of Diddy and Biggie, he seemed to say that we've gone from mo money, mo problems to Mo Mueller, mo problems.
I love you, Ari.
I thought we were going to do Kendrick Lamar, and Michael Cohen's going, "You're dead to me." So, but okay, I can go with you, Ari. But
I mean, we could go Kendrick and say he's telling Jerome Corsi, "Be humble, sit down."
Yeah. So
go ahead, Maya. I mean, we could do this all night.
Yes, we could. So, but we don't have time.
But we won't.
But we won't. Later, Christmas party. So I actually agree with Donnie in the sense that the money is a critical part of this story. I have no question about that. We've already seen that with the news that has broken today. I will say that if there's a family, and it's a crime family, that Michael Cohen was part of La Cosa Nostra. And I think what he's done here has been a lot wiser than Paul Manafort, and recognized that he's a lot better off getting a divorce than he is going down. And I think he made the right decision, certainly, but I think he made it for self and family, personal family, instead of the crime family.
Donnie, I'm over time, and that's partly my fault from the 90s rap references, but I give you the final word.
Can I bring up an ABBA reference, or is that not right for this show?
all views. Welcome, all genres.
Out of respect to the reverence of hip-hop on the show, I'm not going to bring disco or ABBA into it.
I like ABBA.
I do too, but I'm just not going to do it.
But your final thought on where Cohen goes from here?
Where Cohen goes from here, I think Cohen, you're going to see a relatively light sentence come December 12th based on recommendations from Bob Mueller. And I think Cohen, you're going to see as more and more comes out, Cohen will be pivotal as the guy that was there front and center for 10 years with this business enterprise, with this criminal enterprise, with this criminal family. You're going to see Michael Cohen be a real linchpin here.
Donnie Deutsch and Maya Wiley, thanks to both of you for your expertise and your analysis. Very interesting tonight. Hey, I'm Ari Melber from MSNBC. You can see more of our videos right here, or better yet, subscribe to our YouTube channel below. You could have been anywhere in the world, but you're here with us, and we appreciate that.